There's a new shotgun shell in Tarkov called Piranha that shares many similarities to the infamous Flechette. I've had a ton of questions on which is better, so today, let's find out. Starting with the basics, these two cartridges have been reshuffled a little in access. You used to be able to craft Flechette with a metal fuel tank and 4 blue gunpowders, but this craft has been replaced with Piranha. However, you can still buy Flechette from Jaeger 3 after finishing Forest Clearing as before, which bizarrely means that Piranha is now craft only and Flechette is trader purchase only. With empty metal tanks costing approximately 0 once you've used them, this makes Piranha about 1,000 rubles per shot versus Flechette's very cheap 334 rubles once you have access to it, not to mention the opportunity cost for time spent crafting in the workbench. Stats wise, Piranha is now the second multi-shot high pen ammo in the game. Both have 25 damage per dart, but Piranha fires 10 instead of 8 like Flechette, which improves the total raw damage output to 250 from 200. This also makes it slightly more likely to hit headshots with the increased number of darts. On the flip side, Piranha's pen value is quite a bit lower than Flechette's at 24 versus 31, with slightly lower armor damage as well, which is what Flechette is well known for, being quite capable of busting through even high tier armors in a few hits. Piranha is also slightly less likely to cause a bleed and a tiny bit more accurate, although I would put zero emphasis on this point as accuracy relates to MOA rather than anything useful for a buckshot style shell. So the trade-off between the two is primarily damage versus penetration, or kind of more armor damage, which I'll explain in a second. But it's worth noting that the changes to black limb damage spillover partway through last wipe has made Flechette itself feel quite weak in some scenarios, namely those where you aren't at point blank. Black Darms now only pass 49% of damage through to the rest of the body, and given Flechette only has 200 total to begin with, which is relatively low for that type of cartridge, this gets whittled down quite rapidly. Just as a thought experiment, if you shot a PMC in the arm repeatedly with Flechette now after the change, with every dart hitting, you deal 60 as normal and then the arm would get blacked, leaving 140 spillover afterwards, which turns into 68.6, so that comes to 128.6 damage on shot 1. After this, the arm damage would all be spillover damage at the reduced rate, which is 98. After shot 2, this is 226.6, 324.6 after shot 3, and 422.6 after shot 4. It would take a 5th shot with Flechette into the arm to take down our opponent, and of course this is a bit of a silly example, but when you think about shooting shotguns at distances over about 10 meters, straight up misses due to the cone, hits across various limbs on the body, and armor absorptions, it's easy to see why it feels like a confetti cannon sometimes. The little extra damage on Piranha is certainly welcome. It is 25% more after all, but can it stack up similarly against armor in the way that Flechette can? Flechette's redeeming feature is that because of the way that penetration and armor damage combine together, it's extremely formidable at close range, even against armors with a high class rating, and especially those with lower durability. At a surface level, the way that armor damage is broadly calculated is the penetration value of a projectile multiplied by the armor damage percentage, but there is another modifier as well that relates the pen of the projectile to the armor's class 2. In this way, penetration is used twice in the calculation, so it's very important, and we can expect that Flechette will do roughly 20% more damage to armor than Piranha will, even without this extra factor. But to really figure this out and be sure that we're coming to the right conclusions, we need to jump into raid and get some testing done. Starting with the class 6 armors, we tried a Slick, a Tigillerig, and a Juk 6. There are small variations in armor damage for all bullets in Tarkov, but a full blast of Flechette hits a Slick for somewhere close to 27 durability, leaving it at 53 out of 80, and with minimal blunt damage only causing 11 to the wearer. Piranha hits for about 22.2 durability instead, meaning that Flechette is just over 20% more in total, although Piranha has a slightly increased blunt damage of 13 instead due to a higher base damage of the overall shell. Practically, this means that Flechette will 3-hit a Slick, as the final few darts on hit 3 will start to go through, and when combined with the blunt damage that was already applied, ends up killing the target. Piranha on the other hand will take 4 shots because the durability of the Slick is simply not low enough to let any projectiles through by the time that shot 3 finishes. It's worth pointing out that the game calculates each dart as its own individual entity, slowly whittling away the armor damage, so you can end up getting penetrations on darts 6, 7 and 8 for example. The performance that we saw on the Slick is very similar to the other two class 6s. Flechette deals 21.2 armor damage to the Tigillerig versus 17.4 from Flechette, and 30.9 to the Juk 6 versus Piranha's 25.3. This practically means that Piranha typically takes 1 extra shot under ideal circumstances on all of these class 6 armors. Moving down to class 5, we start to see the impact of Flechette's extra pen coming through against the Corunt, usually a PMC's first accessible class 5 armor. Flechette takes this one down from 45 durability to 17.1, dealing nearly 28 armor damage and shredding its durability so that the second hit will certainly kill. This is the power of the shell. Even against those armors rated much higher than its 31 pen, it's able to take them down pretty quickly. Piranha deals 22 damage instead, pulling Flechette further ahead because it causes 27% more damage, which was more than we saw for the class 6s, and again it takes an extra shot for Piranha to get through with 3 rather than 2. We saw exactly 27% more armor damage for Flechette, both with the Redoute M as well as the Tagilla face shield as well, and although the Redoute is a beast for protecting against both of these ammos, Flechette will still take it down in 4, with Piranha needing 5 to do the job. Thus far, the only armor that was the same for both was the Tagilla face shield. It has a low enough durability that Piranha will also kill the wearer through it in the second shot. So finally, let's move on to the class 4s. Here the difference in pen had a significant effect. Flechette consistently dealt 55 to 57% more armor damage than Piranha, effectively shredding all the armors in this class with ease. The only one that remotely protects our PMC at all is the Trooper that can withstand 2 hits from Flechette, but after this even blunt damage will take the PMC down due to hitting for over 30 to the thorax despite no direct penetrations occurring with the darts, which is quite incredible. So overall, which should we use of the two ammos? Piranha is actually a decent shell and is accessible earlier than Flechette at Workbench 2, so if you don't have the unlock from Jaeger 3 and you want to use shotguns with this type of cartridge, it's certainly a good option. In a real life scenario, you probably won't be able to tell the difference between the effectiveness of the two, and although Flechette is generally more deadly for straight on thorax hits with decent armor, you have a greater headshot chance with Piranha because of the increased number of darts. However, once you get access to it, there's not really much point running Piranha anymore. Ballistics aside, Piranha ends up costing more and utilizes the workbench unnecessarily to craft as well, making Flechette the better choice between the two. I don't think that the small increased chance of a headshot makes up for the diminished ability to smash high tier armor. So as usual, a big shout out to all my patrons and have fun in your raids.